Hello there, welcome along to this week's special weekly podcast for you. You're listening to this on Spotify Music, Apple Podcast and Google Podcast, and visually as well, for this podcast as well, because I am doing a YouTube video. So hello to the YouTube viewers out there who is watching this special podcast that I'm doing. Obviously to cover the Apple WWDC 2022 event and everything that was announced at the keynote. You may notice if you're watching on the YouTube channel, SteveOfficial, that I've got my dog Buddy right here. He's currently chewing a chew toy at the moment, a little chew bone. So yeah, so that's what he's up to at the moment. But anyway, let's cover everything that was announced then at this year's WWDC event, and it was quite a big event, really. So we're going to start with iOS 16, which is for the iPhone users out there. So Apple is making some big changes to the lock screen with iOS 16, completely reimagining the way it looks and works. Users will be able to add widgets at long last for things like weather. Additionally, you'll be able to customize the font and color of elements on the screen. Apple is also adding a gallery of wallpapers for users to pick through and customize too. Notifications also won't cover up your lock screen anymore. Instead, they'll roll up from the bottom and you can choose to just hide them as well. Live activities like your workout, tracking or listening to music also appear at the bottom of your lock screen. Previous versions of iOS added focus modes to help tap down notifications, and now it's introducing focus filters to extend to apps. Basically, you can engage focus filters to filter out unwanted content from messages, calendar, mail and other apps. This is especially useful if you're trying to focus on work, and then you can have Safari filter out all non-work related tabs. Messages is also getting 3 big updates. The first one is the ability to edit any sent messages, useful for correcting typos, and you can unsend a message as well. Next, you can mark threads as unread. iOS 16 is also adding share play apps to FaceTime and messages. What's more, dictation is getting a serious upgrade to allow you to seamlessly switch between typing and voice dictation, which also picks up on emoji detection from your voice too now as well. Apple is also pushing more AR features into iOS 16 with live text. You can select text from your images and get quick actions like copying it, or contextual actions like translations and currency conversions. You can also use the iPhone's AR abilities to pull a subject in an image away from the background and paste it anywhere like a sticker. You'll be able to add your State ID to your Apple Wallet with iOS 16. What's more, Wallet will be able to authenticate your identity to apps that need it, such as Uber Eats, checking if you're old enough to buy alcohol. Additionally, Apple Pay will soon support payments, installments, and order tracking with shipping tracking information. Apple Maps is adding 3D views for Atlanta, Chicago, Las Vegas, Miami, London, Melbourne, Montreal, New York, and more popular destinations. If you're into sports, you'll be glad to hear Apple TV app will show you scores and play-by-play on the lock screen with the new live activities widget. There's also a new My Sports section of Apple News that you can use to quickly see highlights and all the current standings of any teams you follow. Apple is introducing iCloud shared photo libraries that allow up to 6 Apple users to create a shared photo album. On top of manually uploading photos, users can set smart upload filters to send photos to the shared library right away if they're taken from a particular location or time, and other parameters. CarPlay is getting a serious UI user interface upgrade to integrate itself with your car's built-in screens. No matter how your car's built-in screen is shaped or laid out, Apple promises CarPlay will work with it, and beyond that, users will be able to customize their instrument cluster with different colors, dials, and more. According to Apple, vehicles with this new version of CarPlay will be announced late next year. So that's everything announced with the iOS 16. watchOS was up next with watchOS 9, and Apple kicked off updates on watchOS 9 with an extensive workout app update for runners. The improved app adds 3 running from metrics to track how efficiently you run. The Apple Watch uses its accelerometer and gyro to monitor your running form, stride length, and ground contact time. The watchOS workout app is also adding a new mode for triathletes that can auto-switch between cycling, swimming, and running. Opposite of working out, Apple has improved the sleep app to detect REM core and deep sleep. And for those diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, watchOS 9 can now track the amount of time your heart spends in AFib. With this information, it can help you identify the time of day or week your AFib is most active. Slightly going back to the iPhone, you can use camera to scan and track your medications so you don't run into any bad medication interactions. Apple also announced its second generation silicon chip for the Macs in the form of Apple M2. So Apple's second generation computing processor is here at long last. Of course, the new chip brings new efficiency and performance cores. The new M2 chip promises 25% more GPU performance and 18% more performance overall over the M1 chip. The new processor comes equipped with 4 high-performance and high-efficiency cores, and it also supports 24GB of unified LPDDR5 memory. With a new neural engine and secure enclave, Apple promises the M2 can handle multiple streams of 8K and 4K video. Now, with this, you're probably now asking the question, what Apple Mac device is the first to come with the M2 chip? Well, I can officially confirm that a brand new model in the form of the MacBook Air has been announced at the Apple WWDC event, and of course this will be the first laptop to be getting those M2 chips. So the new MacBook Air will be the first Mac to come running Apple's new M2 processor, and it's sporting a fresh new look too. The new MacBook Air sports a decidedly less wedge-shaped and more squared-off design that essentially looks like a thinned-down MacBook Pro with M1 Pro. The new MacBook Air measures 11 meters thin and weighs 2.7 pounds, making it one of the thinnest and lightest Macs ever. The MacBook Air also sports a larger 13.6-inch display with 500 nits of brightness and support for 1 billion colours. Of course, the new display also comes with a notch, and it's there supposedly to make room for the new 1080p camera. That same 1080p camera can be found, of course, in the M1 iMac. The new MacBook Air also features MagSafe and a new AC adapter. With both, it can support fast charging to get to 80% in 20 minutes. The MacBook Air will be available for a starting price over in the US of $1,199 from July. Of course, other international markets pricings are still yet to be confirmed at the time of recording this podcast and YouTube video. Now, there is a second MacBook that is going to be getting that M2 chip as well. So it's not just the MacBook Air that's going to be getting the M2 chip, because Apple also confirmed at the WWDC event that the MacBook Pro is also going to be lined up with the M2 chip as well. So, interestingly, after Apple introduced the new and redesigned MacBook Air, it's also keeping around the old MacBook Pro and upgrading it with the new M2 processor too. Now, we're not entirely sure why Apple decided to keep around this old design, since it now has a smaller screen than the MacBook Air. However, the old MacBook Pro could be a good option if you're looking for a fan-cooled M2 chip, or you're holding onto the touch bar. Now, to be honest, this is true. I mean, the MacBook Pro that they've just announced here with the M2 chip is that of the 13-inch MacBook Pro. So, it's very interesting to know that why you would want to go for a MacBook Pro with a slightly smaller screen, where you can have a MacBook Air which is thinner, lighter, and a bit more of a larger screen. I don't know. And then moving on, of course, as always, there is a brand new name for the new Mac OS, update that comes out every year, around about September, October time. And this year is no different. Currently, if you are a Mac user, you'll be using macOS Monterey. But this year, Apple have decided to call the next macOS update macOS 13 Ventura. So there we go. So we got our first look at macOS 13, and it's been newly christened as Ventura. Apple is introducing a new way to keep Windows automatically organized with Stage Manager. Essentially, this new system puts your apps into a single window mode that moves everything off to the left when you switch between apps. Apple is also improving Spotlight by adding quick actions like starting a timer and giving users richer search results. Mail is also getting a bunch of improvements, including reminders, unsending email, and scheduling messages. Additionally, Apple is adding more mail search features on top of built-in autocorrect and typo correction. Next, Safari will let you share tabs so you can discover the web with friends and family. Apple also wants to replace passwords with biometric passkeys. Next up, Metal 3 could be the biggest thing gamers on Mac have been looking for. Metal 3 basically upscales low-resolution frames using AI, so you can run games with fewer resources while increasing frame rate. This technology is essentially Apple's version of NVIDIA DLSS and AMD Fidelity FX, and if it works as well as theorized, it could lead to more gaming on Apple's computers. To reflect this possible future, Apple brought a Resident Evil Village on stage to endorse the technology. Apple also showed a demo of No Man's Sky running on a MacBook Pro with M1. Lastly, Apple showed off how macOS Ventura will allow users to use an iPhone as a webcam using continuity. Finally, you can hand off FaceTime calls from an iPhone to a Mac without having to hang up and rejoin a call. And then, of course, we go on to the iPad with the next update in the form of the iPadOS 16. So the main focus of Apple's new iPadOS 16 update was on collaboration. To this end, Apple introduced a new freeform app that basically acts like a digital whiteboard for multiple iPad users to share their ideas through notes, images, PDFs, and Apple Pencil scribblings. Apple is also adding more collaboration into its Office apps, including Pages, so other users can make edits similar to how Google Drive works. Collaboration should also be coming to other apps, including Files, Keynote, Numbers, Pages, Notes, Reminders, and Safari. The 12.9-inch iPad owners will also be able to take advantage of a new reference color mode for editing photos and video on the tablet's Liquid Retina XDR display, and for all M1 equipped iPads, Apple is also introducing a display zoom feature that lets users boost the pixel density of their display. Also, finally, after 16 iterations of iPadOS, Apple tablets are finally getting an official weather app, which is good news. I mean, you know, if you want to know the weather and you don't want to check your phone, but you've got your iPad there in your hand, then that's great, isn't it? It is absolutely great. So there we go. So that is basically everything that really got announced at the Apple WWDC event that took place yesterday, Monday the 6th of June, 2022. Now, to be honest, there isn't really a lot there. I like to think that, obviously, with me being an iMac user, I don't really... I mean, other than the window thing, where, you know, you've got so many windows open and you can easily hide them in the background, that to me, is probably the most biggest thing that stands out of everything that was announced at the WWDC event. Obviously, there isn't really a lot in terms of hardware that was announced, obviously, because normally this event is kind of more aimed at developers, so they know, they get basically an idea as to what Apple are doing with their next major updates, so that for them, as developers, they can basically then go away and kind of reiterate their apps and kind of, you know, make it work alongside the next big updates, like, for example, iPhone, iOS 16, or iPad, iPadOS 16, or even for the Mac, with the macOS 13 Ventura. So, yeah, so that's basically it. I mean, obviously, there is going to be more Apple events being held a little bit later on in the year. I should expect that we'll probably get an Apple event taking place in around about September time. That's where they usually announce their new range of iPhones and new range of iPads, and maybe a Mac or something. I mean, we're still holding out on the iMac Pro as well, which Apple did tease at their last Apple event that they did hold a couple of months ago. Obviously, I'm really surprised that we didn't see this at this WWDC event, to be honest. I mean, when the M2 chip got announced, I did think to myself, maybe the iMac Pro is going to be getting the M2 chip first, because that makes sense. I mean, I also did think to myself, but then at the same time, it's weird that the iMac Pro would be the first Mac to get the M2 chip, but then skipped the first generation of Apple Silicon chips. So yeah, it is really interesting, but I mean, it's going to also be interesting how they're going to present the iMac Pro now, because when you think about it, if you was to, I don't know, announce the iMac Pro, let's say in September, and you were to announce the iMac Pro with, I don't know, the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips, you know, it's kind of a bit of a downgrade at this point, because when you've got a MacBook, for example, that's running the latest Apple Silicon chip, and then you've got Apple announcing the iMac Pro with the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips inside the hardware, it's kind of a bit of a downgrade at that point. So it does make me think, by September, are they going to be bringing the M2 Pro to maybe the iMac Pro or something? Or maybe the M2 Max? Or both? You know, are they that far in advance that they've got that capability of doing that? It's going to be really interesting to see. I do think it is a possibility. We could see it, but I mean, I'm just going to hold out and wait. I mean, like Apple have said, you know, that there is going to be an iMac Pro, probably a redesigned iMac Pro as well. But yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll see what happens with that one. But yeah, other than that though, for developers across this week, obviously there is going to be a lot of workshops going on for developers that can get involved in some of that. But yeah, for us as consumers though, obviously I just thought I'd bring you up to date with the latest that's been happening from WWDC, and of course some of the more important major updates that's coming to your iPhone, iPad, Mac OS, or even your Apple Watch if you have an Apple Watch. But yeah, either way, I'm really excited to see what's next for Apple. and I'm looking forward to seeing what the iPhone 14 has got to offer, and maybe a potential new range of iPads later in the year. Anyway, that is pretty much it for this podcast. I know it's a bit short, but there we go. Yeah, that is it for this podcast. Of course, if you are listening on the audio platforms in the form of Spotify Music, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast, then, of course, don't forget there will be a brand new podcast coming up this Friday, which is Friday I believe the 10th of June. Yeah, Friday the 10th of June 2022 is when my next weekly podcast will be coming up. I'll tell you just very quick what's coming up in that one. I'm going to talk about some albums I've been listening to recently in the form of Liam Gallagher and Todrick Hall. I've also got some news, actually, in regards to Robbie Williams, which got announced today. I'm going to talk about that later in the next weekly podcast, okay? Also coming up, I'm going to have a couple of movie reviews as well, and I'll bring you up to date with all the latest news that's been happening in the world of showbiz and tech and stuff like that across this week as well. So feel free to listen to that podcast. That'll be podcast episode 96, which will be out on my Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify Music channel, which is Steve's Weekly Podcast. Feel free to listen to that from Friday at 4 p.m. Meanwhile, here on my YouTube channel, very quick, just going to say that is it from me. I will be back with another vlog for you. I'm going to do another vlog a little bit later on in June. It'll be coming out on Friday, the 24th of June. In that vlog, I will be talking about everything that is Paramount Plus and its UK launch. And I'll be showing you around the app and all of that jazz. But yeah, from me though, it is goodbye. Thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you guys in my next YouTube video or my next weekly podcast. See you soon.